Hello and welcome to our session. My name is Andrea Barraugh, and I will be facilitating this session with Rusty Bresser. We're the founders of Math Transformations, a math professional learning company based out of San Diego. I'm a longtime researcher, and Rusty, go ahead and tell about yourself.
Hi, my name is Rusty Bresser. I have been a classroom teacher and a lecturer at the University of California at San Diego for many years.
Today, we'll be talking with you about using strength-based math interviews to uncover young children's mathematical thinking. We'll use our time together to allow the teachers of San Diego Unified to describe how these interviews shifted their perspectives about their students and the way they were meeting students' needs in the classroom. Please remember to download our handouts from resource space on this website. And following our presentation, we will be responding to your questions in the chat space for the live Q&A. Now let's get started. So first, we want to be clear about what we mean by strength-based assessment and why it makes sense. Often in education, we focus on what students don't understand or what they need to work on, which is a fine thing to do. But we also know that focusing on weaknesses often results in deficit perspectives for educators and can negatively impact students' mathematical mindsets. So in our work with teachers and their young mathematicians, we instead choose to shift our lens from what students don't understand and can't do to what students do understand and can do. It seems so simple, but it is a monumental shift in the conversation, and it has a profound impact on teachers' perspectives of their students. So for us, strength-based math assessment means opening a window into how a student is thinking about mathematics and allowing ourselves to observe and listen and be intrigued by their ideas. A key instrument in the work that Rusty and I have been doing with the math interview, making sure that we're sitting side by side with students and using an interview format. We carefully design our math interviews to integrate students' lives and interests. And finally, if the math assessment is doing its job, then it's educative for the teacher. The teacher learns about how students' mathematical thinking develops and how to guide their next steps.
So just to give you a little context, these are some students and teachers at Baker Elementary, which is in the San Diego Unified School District in San Diego, California. It's where we've been doing some of our interviews. Baker is an inner city school with a diverse student population where about 88% of the students receive Title I support. The community, the students, faculty, staff, and administration have been really wonderful and supportive and welcoming. So we just wanted to give a shout out to the folks at Baker and thank them for giving us the opportunity to work at the school. So we'd like to share an example of a student at Baker Elementary. So in the following audio recording, you'll hear Andrea interview Carlton here, and he's a kindergarten student. And then afterward, you'll hear from his teacher, Sharon Farguson, and listen to her reflect on what she noticed and learned about Carlton from the interview.
One more day and my brother gonna be here. Happy birthday.
How old will he be on his birthday?
Until 11.
And you told me a minute ago that he is 10 now. How old are you?
5.
You are 5. Can you put 5 cubes on that plate?
My dog is 3, and I'm gonna be 4.
Your dog is 3. Who's older, you or your dog?
Me.
And how old are you?
5.
Can you put 5 cubes on that plate for me?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
There's 5 cubes on that plate. And now we have a group of cubes that are not on the plate. Which group has more?
They got the same.
Oh, they have the same. How many cubes are here?
2 and 3. And here's 3 and 2.
Okay, so how many cubes are on the plate?
5.
How many cubes are off the plate?
5.
What if we put them all together on the plate? How many cubes would you have?
6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
How many cubes are on the plate?
10.
And how old is your brother?
10.
How many more cubes would I need to add for his next birthday?
1.
Okay, will you put that on there? How many cubes do we have now?
11.
What about if he had another birthday? How many cubes would you have?
Like 1.
So how many cubes are on the plate now?
12.
How do you know that?
Because this is like 10, this is 11, this is 12 now.
I see. What if we mix them all up? Now how many cubes are on the plate?
12.
How do you know that?
Because this, there, these. And you take 2, and now you put 1, it's 11, but then you put another, you put, now it's 12.
I see.
So much fun listening to Carlton. And we learned some things about his mathematical strengths by listening to his interview. So you may have noticed that he counts on when adding. He knows one more and what comes next. He can combine quantities within 10, and he can compare numbers. So we learned quite a bit. So now we're going to give you a chance to listen to his teacher, Sharon Farguson, commenting on the value of a strength-based math interview compared to other forms of assessment.
I think what really stands out is that when he was given an exit slip or anything with a paper and pencil, he would often just put his head down, or he would write something on the paper and then show it to me and ask, is this right? Is this right? Did I do it right? And just in this interview, you really saw how much he knows and how confident he is about what he knows. I really love hearing that confidence that he has and that joy. And I never would have heard that or seen that on a paper or clicking on a computer.
So Sharon's perception of Carlton really seemed to shift. She was used to seeing him exhibit behaviors that made her perceive him as lacking mathematical confidence. But after observing him in this interview, her belief about what Carlton can do seemed to really change. And she told us that she actually adjusted some of her instruction in the classroom as a result of the interview.
So as you heard in the interview with Sharon, teachers are finding the value of the one-on-one interview. And you see in front of you here this idea that we're working with San Diego Unified's vision about what they want to be able to discover about students. And we worked with them to develop the set of interviews, which we call the Math Demi, or the District Essential Math Indicator. We initially were afraid to make it be a one-on-one interview. We were afraid that over the course of a day in a classroom, in a primary classroom with so much activity, that teachers would really feel stressed about trying to squeeze in one more thing that they have to do with students, and one-on-one can be daunting. But we've been hearing again from the teachers that we work with that they want this one-on-one interview. They say, if we can do this in reading, then why couldn't we do this in math? They think it's important. So we carried forward with the design of these interviews, keeping them one-on-one, but trying to make them short, 10 to 15 minutes. And with the district's focus, we decided to narrow our interviews to numeric reasoning. We know that numeric reasoning is the cornerstone of early elementary mathematics. And then some other structures that we made sure to think about with the teachers and put in place were, would we allow any pencil paper, or would we stay mental math? And initially teachers would say to us, they could tell us so much more if they had a pencil and paper to do this on. But over time and different trials, the teachers really settled into the idea that we can get at students' thinking in a much more clear way if they are sharing their mathematical thinking and talking about how they're solving problems mentally. And then we added in manipulatives because students can really talk about their thinking and show their thinking when they're using manipulatives. And you can see the last box on this screen is something that we've done with San Diego Unified, and that is build a digital dashboard for teachers to really help teachers guide these interviews in a smooth way. So here we have Kathleen Gallagher, who is the principal of Baker Elementary, and she really has some passionate thoughts about the effects of these math interviews and why they are so important.
Other thing about the interview is just as you observe them, all you see is joyful interacting. You see smiling, you see laughing, you see kids really caring about what it is that they're trying to do. And you see that over and over and over again. And I just think about a typical math lesson where teachers are trying to keep kids on task and, catch kids who aren't on task. And in this, they're so focused on the student that they're really able to bring out the joy of learning in every single interaction. I think it's so beautiful.
So Kathleen's observations really match the experiences that Rusty and I have been having with teachers. We find that when teachers focus on one student and notice what that one student can do, something really magical happens. They can see evidence of all the good teaching that they have been providing. And often students know and are able to do so much more than the teacher expected, or that's evident when they work with students in a whole class setting. The students really respond beautifully to this opportunity to share their thinking in a one-on-one setting. They love having that captive audience just to listen to them. So now what we're going to do is listen to Olivia interviewing a transitional kindergarten student, Camila. She's 4 years old, and she's a very active TKer. Prior to this interview, her teacher said that she appeared to be able to count to 10 when she watched her in the classroom. She hadn't seen her count beyond 10 before. And she really was hoping that Camila would show, more perseverance, more focus, more attention to tasks at hand. And she was really quite curious about what would happen with this button task that we're going to show you, where we're giving Camila more buttons than she can count. This was a suggestion of Nick Johnson out of San Diego State University and some of his work to give students an open-ended task, more than you expect they can handle, and see what they can do with it. So as you watch this video, we want you to really focus on what can Camila do. This is a strength-based assessment. What are Camila's strengths?
Okay.
Wait,
Camila, can you help me count those buttons?
Yeah.
Thank you.
1, 2, 3. Wait, you mean all that?
Yeah? Yeah?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, and 22, 25, 26, 27, 28, 16, 17, 18, 19.
So that's a lot of buttons, isn't it? How many buttons is it?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 29, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20.
Wow, great job.
I love watching that clip. So Camila was so proud of herself, and there were a lot of things that you could notice in here that were strengths for Camila. I'm going to go ahead and play a clip for you. We're going to give you an opportunity to listen to Sparkle, Camila's transitional kindergarten teacher at Baker Elementary, comment about what she noticed.
So the student I'm thinking about is Camila. Actually, I expected less from her because she's like the youngest in my class, like a really young 4. So I thought at most she can maybe count up to 10. But during the math interview, I realized how like her skills were so sophisticated. Like she was organizing the buttons before she counted them, and she did one-to-one corresponding. And I was really amazed. And she was confident. Like she was totally confident. Like she counted, I believe, maybe up to like 21 each time. And she was very confident about that. I adjusted my lesson where I had more like counting materials available instead of the Unifix cubes. So I have like gyms that she'll be interested in to get her more engaged so she can count, higher than like 21, so she can count up to 40. I had buttons as well and some jewelry that she liked, necklaces, little fake rings. And but Camila really surprised me on how organized she was with her counting.
You can hear in Sparkle's reflection the power of taking the time to really allow Camila to tell her math story. And she changed her expectations. Camila has a greater chance to go further in math and learn more because her teacher was able to really see her strengths and what she understands. As we continue to share with you the value of interviewing students through a strength-based lens, we want to take a moment to move beyond the structural elements, which we shared earlier, and highlight for you a couple of the more foundational principles. You see quite a few listed here on this slide, but I just want to highlight 2 for you. One is this idea that we value home language as a strength. And in the interviews that we're showing you now, they're both in English. However, we're really working on building in a language interpreter to be able to allow students to be interviewed and express themselves in their home language. Another principle that we're really passionate about is that the act of interviewing students inspires teachers to adjust their instructional practice. And you heard Sparkle did that, and you also heard Sharon talk about what she noticed. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Rusty to tell us a little bit more about that.
In the next clip, you'll hear Hillary Patz, a 2nd grade teacher at Baker, reflect on what she learned about 2 girls in her class. I was in the room watching Hillary interview her students, particularly these 2 girls. And after the second interview, Hillary had this epiphany about her perceptions of the girls' math ability. And she described how these views shifted after listening to them and interviewing them. So let's take a listen to see what Hillary has to say.
So I went into this, we got to interview 3 of my students, 1 at a high level and 2 girls, Anae and Kaylee, who I thought were at the very same level. And Anae speaks more in class and participates and works well with partners. Kaylee was much more introverted and didn't share a lot, struggled with partnership the whole time. They both got answers right, but they were just, how they presented themselves in class was very different. So with Anae, when she came in, I thought, oh, she's got this. And she didn't. She struggled to explain her thinking, and not being able to use manipulatives and just be able to explain it in words, she struggled with. And then we brought Kaylee in, and she was like, oh my gosh, she knew more, could explain more, and hold onto these bigger concepts than I thought she could. So that really taught me that the importance of having these one-on-one conversations with kids throughout the year, not just at like 3 grading period blocks. I need to make it more incorporate these one-on-one interviews, just as important as having the exit slips, is how my takeaway from that.
Hillary was so surprised about what she learned about these two girls. I think it just blew her away. And it's ahas like this that remind us how powerful it is to get a chance to sit down one-on-one and notice student strengths. Getting to know our students through interviews like these is one way of changing our perceptions and perspectives about our students' math stories and opening our eyes to what they can do in the classroom. Let's hear Principal Kathleen Gallagher's final reflections on this strength-based assessment.
We take so personally like how our students perform on tests. And this shows that our students have a lot more strength and brilliance than a test sometimes shows. And it shows that they can bring a lot to the instruction that we might not have been able to use unless we had interviewed them. And I just loved what, I think it was Hillary who said this too, that, you know, we really prioritize reading with them one-on-one in literacy. You know, we do our running records and we collect data and we try to like figure out where, you know, their strengths are and where their next steps are. And I just love that she said, we need to do that across all curriculum. She didn't even say in math too. She said across all curriculum. So I'm just envisioning classrooms that are changing into more of these spaces where teachers and kids are relating with each other personally and around content in a lot more meaningful and joyful ways.
Rusty and I really hope that our focus on strength-based assessment with children in their early years of elementary mathematics helped you to really think about the power of affecting teaching and learning in a way that gives students more opportunities to experience math with high expectations. So thank you very much for listening to us. And now we're going to go ahead and get started with the Q&A.
Thank you.
Okay, so hello everyone. I'm Andrea Barraugh. We've got Rusty in the room also. And I'm just looking at the chat, seeing if anybody has any questions. And so far I haven't seen anything come up. So we'll just wait here for a few minutes and see if there's anything you want to know a little bit more about. And I'm thinking a little bit more as we're sitting here waiting to see if you have any questions, and wanted to give you some updates that currently we are getting ready to go into our kind of more mature pilot year this year. And we'll be going back into our TK through second grade classrooms in schools across San Diego Unified, and inviting teachers to provide input on the items that we have in our interview, on the reports that we're developing. We're asking for principals to provide input too. And we're hoping that this interview will be ready for other districts to try out possibly in 24, 25. So that's exciting news. And I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Rusty, or anything else that came from our presentation, because I don't see any questions.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking, you know, Andrea, you and I were anticipating what people might ask and maybe address one of them. I was thinking that, you know, one of the issues that come up for teachers in doing an assessment that, you know, takes 8 to 10 minutes per student, you know, there's a concern about the time that teachers have to take in the classroom to do interviews like that. And it's interesting, you know, it is a concern with some of the teachers that we've been working with, piloting these assessment interviews. But time and time again, we hear back from these teachers that, no, this is really important. We do these kind of interviews when we assess students' reading skills. So why not do it with mathematics? And I think the key, they tell us, is that the key is to teach kids how to be independent. So while you're working a few minutes with one student, kids are doing productive things on tasks that are independent around the classroom.
I was also thinking about This idea, the theme that we're speaking to here today is about, increasing expectations of students and giving students, access to greater opportunities to their mathematical futures. And one of the things that we've been hearing from teachers, kind of on the note that Rusty's talking about, is they're asking not to just give this interview twice a year, which is when the demi windows are open in the school district, but they want to be able to give this interview whenever they see fit so they can continue to track student growth. And so, not only are people saying that we can do this, they're saying we can do it and we want to do it more frequently. And I think one of the driving ideas behind that is some of the teachers that we were working with in this early pilot were about ready to make referrals for testing and checking for learning disabilities or considering retention. And they were so surprised by what they uncovered in doing these interviews in a lot of cases that they said we need to be able to have this window into student thinking earlier on. Mm-hmm. I'm looking at Douglas's question here. Did you consider what we use in addition to, but far more frequently, in terms of curriculum embedded assessments? Yeah, so Douglas, one of the things that we, as part of the plan here with the scaling and the adjustments, is to embed this with some of the current curricula that are out there. And we're talking with a couple of different publishers about that. But teachers have said, they want to know not just what can their students do, but what can they do next. And they want it to be connected. So if they get a report or they make an observation and they get this report that says, here are all the assets that your student has, and here is where they are kind of in the constellation of numeric reasoning skills, and here's where they can go next, then there will be a link to what's next in their curriculum that they are using within their district. Does that answer your question, Douglas, or do you want to know a little more about that?
I can toss a question that we get asked frequently by teachers. And the question is like, what makes this assessment different than others? And aside from being an assessment that really looks for the strengths in students, what students can do. The other thing that's unique, I think, is that we try to tap into the interests of students before we ask a question. So we'll have a question in mind on the assessment, but then we'll ask the students something like, what's your favorite snack? And then they'll tell us, and then we'll incorporate that into the question, which, it's pretty surprising how animated kids get when the context is really about them and what they're interested in and what they like. So that's just one of the aspects that makes, I think, this assessment different. And as Kathleen Gallagher was mentioning in the principal at Baker, what makes it so joyful for kids.
It is funny. We ask the students at the very end, what did you like? And it's always, out of all the wonderful things that they did in that interview, it goes back to, oh, I like the problem about licorice, or I like the problem about Cocoa Puffs, or, something that they made it their own. I'm noticing Douglas saying that in the next session, you're going to be talking about learning trajectories. Maybe we'll pop into your session, Douglas. That sounds right up our alley. And, I guess one of the things that we think a lot about with this assessment is making sure that our interviews themselves are well crafted in a way that we are getting access to the most important skills and taking into account where along, a learning trajectory, which isn't always linear, where these skills and concepts fall. And so we are open to continued conversations with anyone to make sure that we capture here the very best, most current research on these trajectories. And, we like to call them, a constellation of skills and strategies that make up early numeric reasoning.
One of the challenges that we're encountering is how to report what we've learned about kids from these interviews to the teachers. So it's actually practical information that they can use for next steps in instruction. And we want to be careful not to, like some standardized tests do, boil a kid down to a number. So one thing that we're looking at now is to both look at accuracy and ways of thinking, like their strategies, and have some sort of useful report for teachers at the classroom level.
Yeah, and that we're connecting to the 3rd through 12th grade, Demi, so that we are part of a comprehensive TK through 12th grade assessment system. And one of the things that happens in the 3rd through 12th grade is that the students' responses are categorized, or the items and the responses are categorized into knowledge, application, and communication. And so one component of our report will be giving teachers and principals and district leaders information about student strengths in those areas and kind of rating them along whether we're seeing evidence of strength or evidence of proficiency, or they're developing in that area. But then there's a whole nother portion of our report that categorizes or really clusters all of their strengths and provides evidence of what the student can do. And we find that to be immediately useful in the classroom, because that's where we have the next steps, and that's where we have the connections to the curriculum.
Mm-hmm. Are there any questions in the chat? Before I jump in again.
I see Douglas just saying that answered his questions, and he's enjoying the ideas. So what did you want to add on, Rusty?
No, I think, I was just thinking of another really important component to this assessment is the professional development piece. So, it's not an assessment where, a teacher just gets a list of questions to ask, but our plan is to work with teachers and work together to learn how to ask questions and how to do an interview. And in the process, teachers learn how to listen better. We learn how to listen better. We learn about the math content from TK, transitional kindergarten, first, second grade. So, and so far, our experience with professional development has been really positive. A lot of laughter, a lot of fun. It's so enjoyable listening to kids thinking, and having conversations afterwards with the teachers about, what did you learn? How have you changed your perception? I think that's really the key thread through this video, this presentation today, is the idea that we can through interview assessments, we can really be surprised and learn more, expand our view of children's math stories.
I think that I want to add on to that, Rusty, that professional learning piece is so critical, because we want this instrument to be educative. And I'm thinking back to an example of one of the teachers we worked with in transitional kindergarten, who said, I'm really curious to see if any of my students can count on when they're putting numbers together. And she said, they just keep going back and counting from one. And those of you who are in the audience probably know that, for a 4-year-old, that's a pretty appropriate strategy, to be counting from one, and counting on is something that develops over time. But she was really feeling uncomfortable with her progress with the students across the year, because they hadn't learned to do that. And when we were able to share the kind of trajectory and constellation of what students can do, she realized that it was okay, that where the students were and what they were doing was quite appropriate for 4th grade. So that was something that she learned a lot about. Valentina, I see that you asked if you can access reports or information about this assessment. And what we would love to have you do is just go ahead and email us, and then we can share information with you. So my email is abarraugh@mathtransformations.com, and I'll pass information along to Rusty. I wanted to add one more piece on too, and that is, as we work with San Diego Unified, the videos that we're capturing that will be part of the Scaling Up Professional Learning, showing teachers how to conduct interviews and the trials and errors and strengths, will all be from their students and their teachers. And that's something we're toying with right now, in terms of, this will be available for other districts to use as is, but it could also have that component where we come in and personalize it, so some of your videos are in there too. Valentina, hopefully you got my email. If you go back to that last slide, my email and Rusty's email is also on there. we're excited about this. Rusty and I have spent, our careers in education, working with students all the way from the very earliest grades all the way up to college and everything in between. And our focus has been math. And we know that assessment is such a driver of everything. And if we get, an assessment in place that is asking teachers to look at something that's not going to make a difference for students, or is not helping them to shift their own perceptions of what young children can do and change their perspective, then oftentimes we just perpetuate the inequities that already exist. But we are finding that when teachers engage in these interviews, they change their classroom practice tomorrow. They try to open up the opportunities for students to share their thinking and tell their math stories. And it also seems to be changing their perspective on what is appropriate for a student at a particular grade level. And it's reducing the number of referrals to special education and testing. And we know that those are things that are not inequitably doled out in the early grades. So at this very important time in students' lives, they often get labeled and tracked. And we're thinking that this interview may be a really healthy intervention to increase students' opportunities.
Yeah, and I think the goal is to help teachers raise their expectations of students' math performance by finding out about their math story. The other thing, just to tag on really quick, another unique thing about this assessment is that it's really been shaped by classroom teachers in collaboration with our team. And I think one of the hallmarks of the work is that we really respect classroom teachers' experience, and they know they work with these kids every day, and we want to hear what their ideas are and get their opinions about the question, helping us develop the questions, anticipate students' responses, and so forth. So the assessments are really shaped by the voices of classroom teachers.
Yes, and I was just even thinking in one of our last sessions in the spring, or I guess it may have even been June, Rusty, when as teachers were providing input and we were adjusting items in the moment before their next student came in, and it was just incredibly empowering for them. So even being a part of the pilot, any way that we can incorporate the expertise of teachers, we're trying to do that. Rebecca, you're asking if the school district is providing teachers with time for the interviews. So keep in mind, we're still in the pilot stage. So at this moment, they have had a full day of release for professional learning with us, during which time we do complete a lot of the interviews for their classes. Because of budget cuts this upcoming year, we know that a lot of subtime or release time is difficult, and so it's going to vary by district. But currently, San Diego Unified is hoping that we can build these into in-classroom, job-embedded professional learning with teachers to complete the interviews. And on that note, I think we're just about out of time. So thank you, everyone. You can email us. We'd like to continue the conversation, and we'd be happy to meet with you one-on-one or just via email.
Yeah, please reach out.